And welcome. Raise your inner game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking about the inner game of life. Tuesdays are for the mental game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. So how are you doing this first week of summer? At least in my mind, it's first week of summer. I hope you're well. Hope the weather is as nice there as it is here. My goodness, it's been really lovely here. Warm, not so windy. Pickleball's been good. We did have some bad air quality alerts. That's a little different. We're in the part of the country that's getting smoke from the Canadian wildfires. And it's really something if you haven't seen that. The weather app will say it's sunny out, but it's totally hazed over like a storm is coming. It's confusing. I haven't felt any of the effects of that. I don't think anybody in our family has. But it's still interesting and slightly concerning. Anyway, plenty to talk about this week. The brewing feud between Trump and Elon Musk. Ukraine's big drone strike in Russia. Senator Joni Ernst's "We're all going to die" comment. Some truly crazy Republican conspiracy theories. A new twist on a mental game exercise. And some new recommendations. All right, we'll start with ups and downs. So what gave me a lift this week and what things were pulling me down? The first up comes again from our kids' high school. I mentioned the prom last week. This week it was graduation. They have a lovely ceremony. In general, the class is quite small, like 17 kids this year. So you get to hear from all of them, and they talk about what it's meant for them to be at that school. And you just can't believe some of their stories. They started out feeling like they didn't fit in anywhere, didn't believe in themselves, sort of typical teen angst, didn't think they were worth anything. 4 years later, they have the confidence and self-awareness and presence that every parent dreams of for their kids. It's really beautiful. We've been involved in the school for like 6 years now, so you sort of start to forget how unique it is. But it's remarkable, the connection between the students and the faculty and each other. It's just amazing how perfect it is, especially for kids at that age. So I wouldn't normally do this, but the school is so great. And they take kids from all over, all around the country, even some foreign students. So I'm going to just gently ask you to consider supporting them. I'll put a link in the school in the notes. It's called Youth Initiative High School in Viroqua, Wisconsin. If you feel so moved, any support would be greatly appreciated. Another really nice thing, speaking of the high school, one of their students this year was a foreign student, English, living in France, lovely young guy, and he became best friends with our daughter, so we saw a lot of him this year, which was great. But he's going back home after this year, so we put together a big surprise party for him, a going-away party. And that was really fun. Tons of work putting it all together. Amazing to me that you can invite pretty much the whole community and somehow keep him from finding out. But they pulled it off, and it was a big success. That was a fun thing. I had another fun evening. Our local Pickleball Association, the head of that, led a free learn-to-play clinic. Last Monday had about 12 people. Some had never played before. Most had played a little, but not enough to remember the rules. He was leading the class, did a great job. I was his assistant for it, and it was just really fun. Fun to see people make so much progress in a short time, fun to see it clicking for them and starting to actually have fun playing the game. I just really enjoyed that. Not a huge surprise that I guess. Teaching actually is the main thing I do when you get right down to it, other than music and marketing and tech stuff. Anyway, that was very nice. Speaking of music, that was the other big up for me this week. As you know, I've been writing again, been fixing up this batch of old songs, working on some new songs, and recording some basic demos. But they're basic enough, but I'm not really comfortable playing them for people, which kind of defeats the purpose in a way. You know, you get something you like, you want to share it with people. But these are so far from finished sounding that I'm afraid it'll give the impression the songs are not actually as good as they are. But I'm feeling sort of stuck there. And the reason for that is, for a very long time, like years now, I thought I really couldn't get my demos sounding better than they do. I have a pretty significant hearing loss from all those years playing in loud live rock bands, so I can't trust myself to get a good mix. I literally can't tell what it'll sound like for people. I also don't know a lot about mixing in general beyond just the most basic sort of rough, demos. I'm also not a good enough player on most instruments to add the kind of solos the recordings need. So my conclusion was the only way to get things to a point where I'm comfortable playing them for people will take way more time and money than I can justify. So I'm basically stuck. And that's been kind of a bummer, especially as I'm piling up all these new songs. But this week I thought, am I sure about that? I mean, if this was just like a real hobby that I was committed to, couldn't I figure out how to do that, how to make things better? And I realized the answer was, yes, I think I could. So I started playing around with it this week, and it's really been fun. I reworked my studio, found a way to work around the hearing loss issue with my monitors. I started studying mixing just a bit, learning some new tips there. Already been helpful. I also just found a new service where you can hire professional musicians and manage recording sessions remotely, and it's super affordable. That was going to be the biggest problem in finishing these recordings, figuring out how to get good players and paying for that. So this could be a huge game changer. So now, all of a sudden, I feel like I'm all in on making music again. There's no reason I can't get my demos to that level. And it's pretty exciting, I must say. Now, there's still going to be demos. I'm not going to be able to produce tracks anywhere near where the songs could ultimately be, but I still think I'll be able to find a nice new level where they're good enough to stand on their own as demos and be played for people. So that is pretty great. I'm also celebrating 1 full year this week of the podcast since I picked it up again last June. We're at around 280 episodes now since the very beginning. That sounds like a lot, right? We'll pass 300 later this summer. Honestly, this is a bit of a mixed up and down for me. I do enjoy it, but it does take up an awful lot of my work week, almost half of it, most weeks. It also keeps me constantly checking the news, which is not the best for my inner gravity. I don't know. I do enjoy it being out there. I feel especially bad to stop now with all that's going on in the world, right? And of course, it's not changing the world, obviously, but it's more than nothing, right? We all want to do what we can. And it does seem like if there was anything I could actually do to help people right now, it would be this, helping them get through all this in as good a shape as possible. Anyway, it's a nice milestone. No plans to pull back anytime soon. The last item this week, up item, is this lovely feud that's brewing between Elon and Trump. We'll talk about that next, but that's just been delicious, making me very happy. So those are my ups this week, quite a few actually. And once again, no particular downs to speak of, which is always nice. All right, up next, top stories. The big story this week, I just mentioned, is this brewing feud between Trump and Elon Musk. I was actually going to lead with something else, but this is quickly getting bigger and bigger, and I thought it was worth talking about. I mean, on the one hand, who cares, right? It's like a gossip story. But in this case, this is actually a huge deal in many ways. The biggest one is because Elon is still quite popular in Trumpistan with a lot of actual power over there. He can still do what he's been doing, which is to threaten any congressman or senator with a well-funded primary campaign if they oppose him. Before, he was using that to help Trump, but now that he's against this terrible tax bill, he could actually bring it down and do a lot of damage to the whole Trump project. Just yesterday afternoon, it started getting more and more personal. Trump is talking about Elon directly, disappointed in him, thinks maybe he has Trump derangement syndrome, saying he knew all about this bill but came out against it because it cuts EV tax credits. Elon says, that's a lie, I never saw the bill. It's funny to have two pathological liars going against each other. Who has any idea what's the truth in all this? And of course, it could quickly get much worse. Elon made huge gains in government contracts for his companies, billions of dollars in new orders. It was all super corrupt, of course, but now Trump is already threatening to pull those. Of course he is. Elon came out and said Trump is in the Epstein files, which is why they haven't been released. That's just explosive. Steve Bannon is saying Elon should be investigated and deported. I mean, it's getting really crazy and very quickly. So on the one hand, it's basically a slap fight on the playground that's mostly just embarrassing, right? On the other, it actually is probably the biggest story of the day, and maybe much longer. It'll be very interesting to see where this goes. If Elon can kill this bill, that is pretty much it for Trump's actual agenda. Everything else he's doing is getting stopped in the courts. On the other side, who knows how far Trump will go to fight back. Anyway, we'll see. Stay tuned. Odd to be enjoying a top story, but there we are. The other big story this week, I'm actually also enjoying, is the big drone strike Ukraine made on Russia this week. This was just so interesting and impressive. I don't know if you read about this, but they launched, I don't know how many drones, I think hundreds, at places all over Russia, deep into the country, thousands of miles from Ukraine. And they were able to take out a lot of really important and valuable aircraft, billions of dollars in damage, major loss to their military capacity. This is an interesting tidbit. Apparently, because of our nuclear arms treaties with Russia, the planes they have that are capable of delivering nuclear weapons have to be stored out in the open. They can't be covered up or in hangars where we can't keep an eye on them with satellites. So the fact that they have to be kept out in the open made them vulnerable to drone strikes. And that's interesting. But then you're thinking, yeah, but drones don't fly that far. How did they get thousands of miles to attack these planes? And the answer is they built false ceilings into a bunch of big semi-trucks. So from the inside, everything looks normal. The drivers even have no idea they're there. But up at the top, there's like an 8-inch space between the false top and the actual top. So when the time came for the attack, they were able to remotely trigger those tops to open and release all these drones. They've apparently been planning this for over a year. It's just a genius operation that caused huge damage to Russia's forces, made them look bad, which they really hate, and made them now have to be worried about protecting their entire territory, right? If they can do this, where else could they hit us? It totally changes their whole defense planning. It was just a crazy success. Now, long term, I'm actually pretty nervous about drone warfare. It's very easy for me to imagine ways this could get bad for us here at home. But for now, this felt like a good thing. And I don't think anyone was killed or injured either. It's just a very surgical strike. And from what I'm hearing, it's the kind of thing that could actually make a difference on the ground. It puts a lot more pressure on Russia to have a ceasefire. It makes it easier for Europe to keep supporting them and pushing for peace. It gives the Ukrainians something to feel good about and hopeful about. And let's not forget Trump's big promise over and over in the campaign, I'll end this in one day, before I'm even inaugurated. It's going to be so easy. We knew he was full of shit then, of course, but we're 4 months in now, and he's been a total failure, both there and in Gaza. He's doing nothing. He doesn't understand anything about it, having no effect of any kind other than making things worse. So that's the second big story. Atop of the list of extras this week, it's a related story. Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, reportedly is considering redoing the presidential daily briefings. Those are where the intelligence services keep the president informed on things that are happening around the world. She's trying to make those more like a Fox News show so Trump will pay attention. For real. He doesn't read. Reporting is he's only looked at maybe one report a week since coming into office. Never mind, it's called the Presidential Daily Briefing. Oh, my God. The president really needs to know about these things, right? Because they are the one who has to make the decisions on what we'll do about them. And it's the most serious stuff the president does. Really, it's probably his number one job in keeping the country safe and fulfilling our role in the world in a way that nobody else in the administration can. But he's such a child that she's literally having to try to make the PDBs more entertaining to keep his attention. It was apparently the same problem with the January 6th pardons. At first, they were working through them one at a time, put some thought into who should be pardoned, who shouldn't. Maybe, don't pardon the violent ones, as J.D. Vance said they were going to do. But there were over 1,000 of them. At some point, Trump got bored. He said, fuck it, let's just pardon all of them. And because he's the president, everyone said, yes, sir. And that's what we ended up with. With a normal person, faced with a responsibility that requires more than they're used to doing, they would step up and work on themselves to make sure they can do the job. Trump just doesn't care. And he has no shame. He doesn't feel responsible to anything or anyone other than his own fleeting impulses and desires. I heard a comment this week, I don't remember who it was from, I think maybe Max Boot, the columnist, but he said, what we're witnessing now is a superpower suicide. He was talking about the absolute idiocy of all the cuts to science and research and universities and keeping out all the smart, ambitious immigrants that have made us the innovation capital of the world for generations. And he's absolutely right about that. We are destroying our position in the world in a way that may well never come back. Superpower suicide. But it also applies to all the other ways. We are tearing down our ability to do what needs to be done in a modern civil society. The tax bill makes deep cuts to the WIC program that provides food to kids and moms. Really, we're doing too much to help poor kids? The new head of FEMA didn't know hurricanes were seasonal. I knew that. I always hear the reports. It's hurricane season coming. He didn't know that. RFK Jr. puts out this important new report that turns out to cite studies that literally don't exist. ICE is being pushed by Stephen Miller. He actually yelled at them at a big meeting because they were going after criminals, they said, which is what Trump said they should be doing, right? That was the whole case for it. But now Stephen Miller said, no. You need to deport 1 million people a year, no matter what. So now they're going into schools. They arrested a kid by mistake. They were looking for his dad. Imagine what that's like for everyone there. Another case, they put kids in zip ties and marched them away like criminals. There's a 10-year-old boy in Houston being held by himself, 10 years old. What's wrong with these people? How can they live with themselves? And the answer is, at least for some of them, they just don't care. They truly don't. Joni Ernst, our esteemed senator from our neighboring state of Iowa, you probably heard this. Someone in their town hall said, people are going to die, referring to what will actually happen from the cuts to Medicare in the tax bill. 11 million people will lose their health coverage because of that bill. And her reply was, well, we're all going to die. Which is bad enough. I mean, again, for real, it's their position. Empathy is a weakness. We want tax cuts for the rich, service cuts for everyone else. It's in their DNA. Greedy and cruel all the way down. But then she made it worse with this awful, cringy Twitter video where she says, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize, so many people didn't realize that we will actually die. I didn't bring up the tooth fairy too, but I just really apologize. You can't even get your head around how stupid and arrogant and heartless and deranged that is. United States Senator. Speaking of crazy, a couple of really good ones this week. First, I don't know how serious anyone really is about this one, but the story seems to be going around that Joe Biden was actually killed, I don't remember how, in 2020, 5 years ago. And since then, we're just seeing a robot. His entire presidency, every speech, every appearance, it's a robot. Personally, I find that hard to believe. I mean, if he really was a robot, wouldn't he be a better one? Wouldn't he be stronger and more capable? Oh, but maybe that just shows how sophisticated the plot is. They programmed in his declining faculties to make it more convincing. Ah, I see it now. The other one, this is actually for real. The Louisiana legislature has proposed a bill banning contrails in the air above their state. Contrails, you probably know, are the streams of what look like steam that come out of the back of jets sometimes when they fly overhead. It's not steam. It's not smoke. It's just condensation caused when the hot air from the engines hits the cold air outside. They're basically clouds. And they don't always appear because it depends on how humid the air is at that altitude. But apparently, I'm just a dupe. I just don't understand. The real story is that the exhaust is mixed with chemicals that can create clouds, reflect sunlight, and change the weather. This is where all that crazy, they're manipulating the weather stuff comes from. The bill's sponsor, again, a real live adult representative, house, whatever the actual house is, in the Louisiana legislature. They said aluminum, barium, and other chemicals have been found in aircraft engine exhaust. She didn't say where she got that information from. She claims NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, is doing this, along with multiple other groups and contractors. She said she has seen documentation implicating at least 9 federal agencies. So this is apparently a huge conspiracy that I just didn't realize was happening. Of course, it makes no sense. And it doesn't seem possible any serious person would propose such a thing in public. Imagine the conversations they're having with their constituents. What are people thinking out there? Why are they so susceptible to insane ideas like this? But just at a practical level, if this bill were to pass, jets could no longer fly through Louisiana's airspace. They're not doing this on purpose any more than I'm intentionally making my breath visible on a cold day. Contrails are a natural phenomenon. It's just insane, batty, all the way down. By the way, reminder, I have a pretty good video that does help explain at least some of what causes people to lose their minds like this. It's called Why Everyone's Going So Crazy and What You Can Do About It. I'll put a link in the notes if you'd like to check that out. On the other hand, not everyone has lost their mind or their sense of right and wrong and personal responsibility and doing the right thing. I talked about this on my Tuesday pod this week, but there was a great moment in the U.S. Open where Carlos Alcaraz had a point awarded to him, but he challenged the point because he knew his racket had left his hand before it hit the ball. So he went to the ref, and this is a pretty high-stakes situation, right? Fourth round of the U.S. Open, lots riding on every point, but he went to the ref and said, no, I didn't get to that ball. That point should go to my opponent. And he got a big round of applause from the audience for that remarkable show of sportsmanship, as he should have. But what stood out for me was how rare that is. Not so much in sports. We do expect that level of honesty and fair play in our athletes, but when did we stop expecting the same from our leaders? When did it become okay to just flat out lie and cheat and steal? The tax bill, the CBO says it will add over $2 trillion to the deficit and take away health care from 11 million people. Congress's own budget office says that. Speaker Johnson is asked about it on CNN. He says, no, this bill will reduce the deficit. It's just a flat-out lie, but it costs him nothing. He and everyone else like him, politicians, especially leaders of all kinds, they keep their job. They're still welcome in society. If an athlete acted like that, they would be out of the sport, as they should be. I can only dream of the day when we again expect the same from our leaders. We expect it. If they don't do it, they're out. Full stop. So I loved Carlos' story in part because it makes so clear how little expectation and accountability there is now for even the most basic ethical behavior of these Republican leaders. Anyway, that is Top Stories for this week. Next up, Inner Game Gold. Last week, we talked again about the benefits of meditation. It's a wonderful and effective mental game tool that helps us in many ways. Hopefully, you got a chance to do some of that this week and feel how great that is. This week, the story with Carlos Alcaraz we just talked about reminded me of the Marshawn Lynch technique, where you look in the mirror, ask ourselves what kind of person we want to be that day, and then work on being that person. So a variation of that, I thought, it would be to think of Carlos doing the right thing in that moment. Again, fourth round, U.S. Open, crazy amounts of pressure from many places, right? The match itself, his competitive feelings of wanting to win, career pressure, legacy, sponsor pressure. Every moment is a big moment at that level. So he's awarded the point. He could just let it go, but he knows he won't be proud of himself if he does. So he steps up and asks the ump to give the point to his opponent. Not only is that impressive from an ethics standpoint, it's also impressive from a mental game control perspective, just right there in the moment. All the momentum, all the inner gravity was to let it go. The easy path in the moment would be to do that. It took real willpower and intention to step up and do the right thing. So we can use that as inspiration for ourselves. Look in the mirror, ask what kind of person we want to be today, and answer, I want to be like Carlos. In all these moments that'll come up today, I want to choose the option I'll be proud of at the end of the day. That's actually a powerful exercise. It takes the Marshawn technique to the next level. Anyway, that's Inner Game Gold this week. Next up, our challenge of the week. So let's just jump in and try this new variation this week, Marshawn plus Carlos. Make a note. I would say shoot for 3 or 4 times this week. Set your intention in the morning to watch out for these moments throughout your day. Most will be little things, right? Are you making the bed or leaving it for later? Are you grabbing that snack or sticking to your diet? It'll be things like that. But set your intention. Try to do your best to choose the option that'll make you proud. At the end of the day, take a moment, write down how it went. This could actually be a very enlightening exercise. Super good practice to watch for these moments. Good to observe which ones are easier than others. That gives you some insights into the relative inner gravity you feel with different situations. And you'll also likely feel pretty great at the end of the day. This is just classic raise your inner game work, and you can typically feel the benefits and the difference of that right away. So give this one a shot this week. I think it might be a good one. Reminder, for more in-depth training on raising your inner game, check out our book and our Raise Your Inner Game Sports Academy training. If you're an athlete or the parent or coach of an athlete, raiseyourinnergame.com for more information on that. All right, next up, highly recommended. I'm still reading Fever Beach from Carl Hiaasen. Still thoroughly enjoying it. It really does make me laugh. Such great character, so outrageous, funny. It's fun, too, that it's very clearly skewering the whole extreme MAGA thing to Florida is the perfect setting for that. You know, I mean, he always writes about Florida, but the fact that Trump and Mar-a-Lago and that whole universe is kind of centered there is just perfect for him to take a shot at. Super fun. I finished Your Friends and Neighbors on Apple TV. Did I mention that already? I don't remember. Anyway, that was a really good show. Also very well done. I think maybe I did mention it. Anyway, recommend it for that. If I didn't, or if I did either way, I recommend it. Now, because of John Hamm being in that show, I decided I would take a look at Mad Men, which was his breakout role from back in 2007. You hear so much about that being another great show. I thought maybe I should give it a look. I watched the first episode. I don't think I'm going to stay with it. It's set in 1960 at the start, and the misogyny is just so in your face that I didn't enjoy watching it. The men were the masters. The women were their possessions, basically. The men were assholes, cheaters. I don't know. I just didn't enjoy it. It was uncomfortable. Was not interested in spending more time in that world. Also, I would have had to pay for another streaming service to watch it. So, Mad Men, not recommended. And that is our show for this week. Thank you, as always, for joining. I do appreciate it very, very much. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a great week. Feel the good work. I'll see you next time.